Certainty is a hell of a drug. When you seek it, you can really fuck yourself if you shoot for too high of a certainty level that would otherwise inhibit action until reach. You have to get comfortable with taking an aggressive level of action to improve show rates, close rates, get your AOV up, shorten sales cycles, improve your business, hire those next reps onto the team, spend a fuckload more money on ads, take that next action, launch that next funnel, bring the new offer to life, whatever it is. If you shoot for absolute certainty, you're gonna fuck yourself. There is a pocket far below absolute certainty that you have to get very comfortable operating in. This will help answer when to do what. And if you find yourself in a state where you're in analysis paralysis, which I bet many of you sitting here watching this channel, rich people trying to get a fuckload richer, I doubt that you're in a state of analysis paralysis. You likely wouldn't identify with that. But however, something that you do frequently do and find yourself consistently struggling with is just not taking the level of action that you know you otherwise should. You're educated on the things to do. You seek information on channels like mine to help increase certainty and get you to the point where you take action. But again, you still find yourself not actually doing the things, or maybe you take the action, it barely works or it doesn't work, and then you fail to go back and iterate it until it works. Whether any of those are your current problem, or you're just interested in learning how to take an aggressive level of action, I've got you in today's video where we're going to cover the spectrum of certainty. And we'll specifically talk about the pocket in which you should be operating in. I presented this at our most recent Q4 mastermind talk here for Jeremy's Inner Circle at our facility in good old Miami, Florida. And I figured I'd give you guys a taste of what was talked about. Welcome into the channel. If you're new, all we talk about around here is cracking $1 million months. Whether it's your first million a month or your next million a month, we got you with our content. We don't do any kinds of earnings claims, earnings disclaimers. There's an extremely low probability you'll ever crack $1 million a month, let alone the next million a month. There's a 0.1% probability, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, that you ever hit $10 million a year, let alone the even smaller probability than that to achieve 12 million a year, aka the big $1 million months. And obviously that number diminishes dramatically further anything above and beyond that. We have no idea who the fuck you are and whether you have any odds at all to turn money into more money. So just sit back, enjoy the lessons. These are from clients who have been there, done that. In this lesson today, specifically, the mindset behind a lot of these guys and how they think and how they operate. So you'll get a lot of value from it if that is what you want to know. Welcome back to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, always a pleasure to have you. Got an absolute banger for you here today. Without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so let me introduce you to what we call the spectrum of certainty. Check out this image here, okay? When you operate where most people attempt to operate, they seek what's called absolute certainty, which typically means that you waited far too long, okay? If you wait too long to do anything, you have very low odds of actually getting results with it, because first mover's advantage is a very real thing. The people who go out there and actually do things first typically experience the greatest rewards of it. The people who take action last typically get fucked on really hard. A great example of this that we've all lived through in the internet marketing world and this whole online marketing space as a whole are how webinars used to be. I will never forget back in, it felt like 2013 to 2014, seeing tools like Stealth Seminar, a tool that some of you youngins have never even heard of. Stealth Seminar was, I think they're still around to be clear, but I don't know fucking anybody who uses them anymore. But anyway, Stealth Seminar was a way to essentially throw on-demand webinars where you could load up an Evergreen webinar presentation. People would opt in. They'd get the opportunity to be there live. And again, it's just a recorded presentation. You'd have the ability to inject comments and make a whole live chat and buttons. It's kind of like what Webinar Jam eventually became for their EverWebinar product specifically. So anyway, back to my point, when EverWebinar came around, even that would have been like years after Stealth Seminar was really in their heyday. And that was really when webinars were picking up. Live webinars were banging. You could do Evergreen webinars and they were banging. It was a hell of a time to be on the internet making some internet money. Now, as time went on, you had major personal brands. I remember Russell Brunson is a great example of this, was one of the #1 advocates that I saw during like the 2016 to probably 2018, maybe 2020 at the very latest of this whole cycle. You had large spokespeople, right? Authority figures in the internet marketing space, in this case, in this example, Russell Brunson, that advocated for his webinar model. He called his the perfect webinar. and he'd get up in front of you, showcase a specific framework that worked well, a templated webinar presentation, and encourage you to go try to do webinars. And at the time, his advice was do a live webinar until you reached a 10% direct-to-checkout conversion rate, and then take it evergreen. And you could do that. I mean, quite regularly during that time frame, that was great advice. You'd get a presentation that was templated, plug all your information into it, do it live until you all of a sudden got it to convert at 10%, and then you could take it evergreen. It was a real dream. We have guys, as a perfect example of this, this is an unfortunate story for this example, but this guy in particular, he's an Inner Circle member today. But unfortunately for him, when he joined into the Inner Circle, he fell all the way down to about $300K a month at that specific time when he joined in. This guy back in that specific heyday was fucking cranking revenue through webinars. He got all the way up to about $1.3, $1.4 million a month with his offer back then. And the specific way that he converted that revenue was through Evergreen webinars. And he rode that shit straight into the ground until it pulled him down through the anchor effect all the way to $300K a month. Why did that occur? It's a cyclic process. We talk on this channel regularly about this concept called the pendulum. Pendulum is a book. It's a great book at that. It doesn't talk about it in the context of marketing. It talks about it in all different types of contexts like political stuff and yada yada. The moral of the story is it says that things move in cycles like a pendulum would. And in this particular case, like back when Stealth Seminar was first coming out and you could run Evergreen webinars and like secretly as though they were live, it's not like webinars were ripping a fuckload of money. That would have been like the very start of the pendulum swinging in a specific direction. And then tools like Webinar Jam and EverWebinar came out, and it's like, bam, we're further along in that cyclic process of the pendulum swinging a direction. And then Russell Brunson starts to advocate aggressively for webinars with his perfect webinar strategy and gives you a templated presentation and tells you exactly what to do. And all of a sudden, everybody and their fucking mom is running webinars. And then the pendulum starts to swing back the other way. And then all of a sudden, webinars aren't converting nearly what they once were. You know, you start to see a diminishing effect where your ROAS starts to drop and you get less and less revenue that's coming in as a result of running webinars and staying attached to that specific strategy until all of a sudden 2020, 2021 comes around. Short form content's king now. Call funnels, DM ads, low ticket to high ticket even really started to take the cake. And all of a sudden you're seeing a completely different spectrum of what people prefer. Direct buying. They don't want to sit there and watch your webinar presentation. They don't give a fuck to hear about it. They know that you're doing a webinar and trying to make a bunch of money on it because that's the level of awareness that webinars reached. And then all of a sudden you're way over here on this end of the spectrum where a completely different funnel type is what is currently preferential in almost all demographics and niches. And are there a few people, even when the pendulum's that far to the other side, that are still cranking money with webinars? Yeah, but it's few and far between. Those stories become rare during those times. And then you start to see the pendulum swing the other way again. And right now where we are, it's very interesting. Like webinars, live webinars, they're fully back. Live webinars are fucking awesome. They've been back. If you've been following my channel and subscribed here for a long enough period of time, you know that for over a year now, we've been screaming at the top of the mountain saying webinars are fucking awesome again, but not evergreen webinars, live webinars. Live webinars are awesome. And if you're obviously one of our buyers in our Master Internet Marketing Program or Jeremy's Inner Circle, you know with even more detail than that, the specific schedule of how many times you should be doing cold in a month, how many times you should be doing warm in a month, and the specific type of webinar presentations that are working best nowadays with examples. My point being, evergreen webinars still aren't back, so that shows we're still rather early on in the pendulum process. Live webinars are awesome. Even live 3-day virtual events, challenge funnels, fucking awesome. Completely back, okay? But again, evergreen versions of this are I'm just now, without exaggeration, like around the time I'm filming this video, I'm starting to see the signs of life that evergreen webinars are back again. Now, I just want to put all this back into the context for how I'm articulating myself in today's video for you. Where do you think the people are in the certainty spectrum who have already been taking an aggressive level of action on webinars? Where do you think they fall in the spectrum? Do you think they wait to see a video like this where they hear, oh my God, webinars are fully back, but not evergreen webinars, live webinars? No, people with a really high appetite for taking aggressive levels of risk who want to make a fuckload of money and take some serious bets before everybody else does, and it becomes bloody waters instead of a blue ocean, they typically do things confidently before other people do, right? And so what that goes to show when you map those people on the spectrum, no, they don't wait too long and they don't seek absolute certainty. Typically what first movers do specifically is they'll just take an action. They'll just test shit. They'll make a bet. It'll be because, hey, all our call funnel leads that are showing up, it's very evident that it would be great if they were educated further before they got onto the sales call. And maybe they haven't heard of all my back-end selling systems yet and implemented those things. And so what's the most logical thing to do? Let's put somebody through a content funnel before we get them onto a sales call. What's a content funnel? A fucking webinar. And they'll try it out. That's what the most aggressive people with the most risk appetite would do. They'd see what's happening in their process and they would just do it. Second movers wait until the first mover already took an action and proved that it's worth the effort to do. And what they do is they not only will take the action after the first mover has, some of that demographic specifically will look for examples too. They won't take the action unless they have a webinar to watch. They won't take an action unless they have a funnel to copy. Not everybody in the second movers batch will do that, but a lot of them will. Now my point is, the second movers, they'll still reap great rewards. The first movers could even get fucked on, believe it or not, because they're taking risk blindly essentially. They have some data that their business supports may be a good idea, or maybe they just want to test for the fuck of it, seeing if something that used to work can work again. But the second movers, they have a good chance, to be fair, to conserve resources, conserve energy, take an action that's a little more calculated, and have a higher probability for it to work, because they'll wait. They'll wait until the pendulum starts to go from the other side to neutral to more into the favor of whatever they're probable to be trying now. And second movers, they still have a long period of time. That's the crazy part about what the Pendulum book describes. There's relatively unknown durations of time for each one of these specific pendulum cycles that exist. But here's what we do know. If you look back in history, in this case, like I said, 2012, like 2014, when I was using Stealth Seminar, right? It's like that felt like the very first part of the pendulum swinging in that direction at all. For all I know, it could have been on the other side swinging in towards the direction of what it inevitably became. But here's my point, is it then takes all the way until it swings back to the other side before the strategy dies. And it might not even die for you. It doesn't die for everybody, but it dies for most people when it swings the other way. You have to be able to take action far sooner than what you otherwise would by having a higher level of risk that you're willing to take and by being a first mover or a second mover. Here's the thing, third movers and fourth movers, these people, the third movers, that third demographic, they won't take an action at all until the first movers and the second movers have taken action for a long duration of time. Long enough for them and the little bit of money that they clutch onto for dear fucking life and their pussies to get to the point where they say, I'm comfortable enough to take this action now. And then the third movers typically come in when the pendulum's already swinging back the other way. Those people specifically, they obviously don't reap as much reward because they don't have as much time to reap the rewards. And they're also starting to take action when it's starting to die. Those are the people typically at the higher end of the spectrum. So many people already told them to do it, or they waited far too long. Okay, that's typically that third and fourth mover. They need every fucking webinar example under the sun to watch and consume. They need templates before they go and take the actions. They need told exactly what to do step by step in order to actually go out there and do what it takes to get some fucking money in their pocket, okay? Now, the third movers and the fourth movers, like, yeah, I mean, technically they can still get results. Yeah, but again, they don't get as long. They don't get as long of an opportunity to reap the rewards of that funnel type. You understand? That's the big difference between the first movers and those fourth stage movers as you move through that spectrum, okay? And so here's the thing, the pocket exists a little bit lower. So here's the thing, first of all, first movers are typically down here. They know very little, they take action anyway. That's a first mover. There is also, in this specific pocket here, two types, right? There's the second movers and then there's the third movers. Second movers, as I said, I think that's a good pocket to be in. It's safe, it is, but it's still relatively high risk because you're doing things early enough on in the cyclic process to get a lot of reward, to have a lot of time to reap those rewards, to have a lot of time to where it's still blue ocean, right? Before it turns bloody waters for whatever your specific niche and opportunity is. There's some information already out there from the first movers and maybe some other second movers who are openly sharing it. And here's the thing, the pocket is typically the best place to operate when it comes to the certainty spectrum, solely because you have examples, even though it's few of them, but you still have examples. And more importantly, you still have a little bit of certainty, the right amount of certainty to take an aggressive amount of action and get the most upside. The easiest thing to compare this to that likely every single one of you understand would be cryptocurrency. And more specifically than that, Bitcoin. I remember back in 2017, I sat there with two mentors of mine at the time, and they were adamant that this was a great thing to invest into. None of us really understood anything about it. We had a general rough understanding from what we could find online. I had no idea when Bitcoin was technically originated. I think it was right after the 2008 financial crisis, but I'm not certain of that. I know that there was like a bull and a bear cycle, I think around 2012. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember the 2017 bull cycle adamantly, with clear vision, okay? There were all kinds of random people that I looked at as smart people who had this aggressive risk for appetite. And they all kept saying the same thing. Even though they didn't know much about it, they would still take actions on it. And back in 2017, there was this thing, it was called ICOs, which was like when you'd launch a new coin, you'd call it an initial coin offering, kind of like an IPO, but for some random coin that you were creating. And there weren't all these crazy platforms that existed and brokers and exchanges. There were a few sketchy ones that existed. I remember using Kraken as an example of this. I don't think I've logged into Kraken forever, but Kraken was a great example of a platform like this. Now here's my point. When that time frame occurred, there was like meetups, there were like little groups, there were just people who were high risk, investing a decent amount, like tens of thousands of dollars into this speculative bet. Everybody got washed who didn't sell it at the top of that bull cycle. A lot of people were new to it at that time. And so a lot of people got turned into what that industry calls bag holders, where they just had to hold on to that bag and pray for dear life that it would inevitably go up in the future. And not every coin did that. Of course, not every coin did that. There were some real junkers back then. Not nearly as many junkers as there are today in the meme coin era. But still, every bull cycle seems to have an apparent thing, kind of like the NFTs had their heyday during the 2021 bull cycle. And then you had meme coins with Solana specifically in the most recent like 2024, 2025 bull cycle, okay? My point is, the people that I know from back then that made a fucking ton of money, they had the highest risk out of anybody you can imagine. They would do things well before getting confirmation bias from any external source. They were just essentially gambling. However, they gambled in a way that, depending on what they bought, made them a lot of fucking money. There were a lot of people, like me included, in that specific 2017 cycle, where I didn't buy nearly as much as what I look back and wish I did. I wasn't doing a lot of the ICOs and that kind of gambling. I was doing things like just spending a little bit of money on Bitcoin when it was at like $8,000 or Ethereum when it was at like 50 bucks, you know? Now here's my point. Obviously in hindsight, I wish I would have invested a whole lot more. And that's kind of the concept of the pendulum effect, is as time passes and you see the pendulum start to swing to the other side, you think to yourself like, fuck me, I wish I really would have exploited that time frame a lot more than I otherwise did. And that is where the third stage and the fourth stage movers exist. They're constantly in this perspective of kicking themselves in the ass and saying,
I wish I would have done more during that time frame. I wish I would have exploited that further. You know, I wish I wasn't such a pussy.
And then you have the first stage movers who take really high levels of risk, who typically are the ones who you end up seeing a handful have crazy stories and crazy outcomes. There's a lot of them that get burnt too, but that second mover, that second type of person, they operate in that pocket where I didn't in any way, shape, or form originate the thought, oh, I should invest in Bitcoin, or I should buy some Ethereum. It's like, no, I listened to some of my smart friends. I was definitely a second mover in that regard. But I do look back in hindsight and feel like a third or a fourth move where I wish I would have invested more. But keep in mind, a third or a fourth mover, they may not have even taken the action. And if they did, they would have invested at the top of that specific bull cycle, right? And so here's my point, okay? You have to successfully get to the point where when you get loaded up with all these actions that you sit here and invest time to learn about, or when you get to the point where you finally have enough balls to say, I'm going to pay this Jeremy Haynes guy. I believe he can help take me to the next level. And you click on one of those links down in the description, like the Jeremy's Inner Circle offer, perfect for rich people trying to get richer. One-on-one calls, weekly group calls. We do our quarterly in-person masterminds at our facility in Miami, Florida. We have a lot of course material in that group as well that'll put you on game, take you up to an extremely heightened level of awareness, unlimited Jeremy AI access, and a really active community. And then you have offers like my Master Internet Marketing Program, which you can preview the first week of the 7-week live classes down in the link in the description as well. My point I'm trying to make to you is simple. For the people that have the courage to invest into themselves, they'll get all kinds of information. They'll have so many strategies to take action on. They'll have so many things they could do that load them up with the possibility to make more revenue for their businesses and capture more profit. And what they ultimately have to do is they have to determine which one of these things are they currently feeling like they're in the pocket with. And therefore that becomes the thing they should take an aggressive level of action on first. This is a way to think of whether you should or should not do something relative to where you're at with your certainty. But in addition to that, it's a way to be able to successfully prioritize when to do what. When you know that all you have to do is have enough awareness and a handful of examples and some smart people that say, this is a good action that's been benefiting my business, I would definitely encourage you to do it too. And they can answer just some questions for you, not even all the questions, but some questions for you. That is the pocket. And that is the best time to take an action. And that is the best time to take an aggressive level level of action. And if you get to the point where you have that list of when I should do what and what I could possibly do, and you just start working through it, and you get over that analysis paralysis, and you get over the lack of action, it really just all comes down to that you're trying to seek absolute certainty instead of operating in the pocket. That's the whole moral of the story to this video. I sure hope that you stop holding yourself back. I sure hope that you finally take the level of action that your business deserves for you to consistently be taking. I sure hope that you stop preventing the additional revenue coming in solely from being in this position where you seek a higher level of certainty than you otherwise should. And I sure hope that you go out there and get richer. Consider subscribing to this video. Go check out some of my other videos on my channel. And again, check out those links down in the description. That's where the real sauce is. Talk soon.